Welcome back to our newest episode on Lord of the Collections. I'm your host, Tyler Macklem, and this is my co-host, Valkrist, and we are incredibly excited and pleased to have Andrew joining us again, as well as Mike Shea, aka Middle Earth Fan PA. Thank you to everyone who watched our last episode. We had a lot of fun filming it, and we had some great feedback. And so I guess I'll just jump right into it here. How did you guys get into making custom prop replicas? Did you start by modifying some of the existing stuff out there, and then it just wasn't enough for you and you ended up, or did you just dive right into making your own pieces, your own custom stuff right away?
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Sure. I started making things from scratch, as early. I think the very first thing I made was Saruman's staff. I was waiting for more things to come out, so I started trying to make my own things. They were a little crude, made out of wood. I found a stone orb somewhere on eBay to build it around, but reference material was very hard to find at the time. But that was the first things that I started doing. I was a little afraid to customize existing pieces at the time. They were a little more expensive. You didn't know the rarity of how things might come. I mean, unless you were going to buy a second one to do it. I hadn't built up that courage to modify my other ones yet, but I started off making my own things.
Okay. How about you, Mike?
So for me, I'm a late bloomer. I've been collecting for a while, but I didn't get on to any kind of forums or any social media till August 2020. So I'm just over 2 years. So before that, I had a lot of collecting. I'd browse YouTube and come across Ben's collection video or White Kings or Andrew's. When I saw Andrew's basement, there was a couple of key items I remember. Probably 4 or 5. His Bilbo table. I saw the table and I'm like, where the hell did he get that? Where do I get one? There was the Palantir stand, the Witch King crown, and then his spear, Aegilis. So those 4, and I knew I could take the table on. It was just basically, a little bit of woodworking, and I was decent at that. So I made that first. Then I got on to the Flame of Odin forum and Instagram, I think the same week, and just got flooded with content. And I found out what Messenger was. I messaged Andrew, asked him a few questions, and I think for the past 2 years we chat pretty regularly since then. Once I made the table, the first big project I took on myself was the crown, and luckily enough, during the pandemic shutdown, I had plenty of time. So it wasn't anything I was in a rush to do. And he gave me a lot of good notes and, just took my time and tried it. So that's how I got involved. I was watching his basement at his previous house, and there's a couple of things in there that are just those moments where you say, I got to have that, and I want to have that, and I want to have that.
I completely understand that sentiment.
Collector envy.
So when you guys take let's say you take a licensed or unlicensed, no judgment there. Sometimes those are even the knockoffs are great to sort of cut your teeth on learning how to modify things, and just because they're probably not as expensive obviously as the real deal, and from what I hear, sometimes the quality ain't even half bad. It's just they're just not official. But let's say, Andrew, for example, you've taken some replicas in the past and made your not inconsiderable modifications to them. One, for example, being your shards and Ursel. When you do something like that, something that drastic, I think most of us here are familiar with what you did with it, and you'll probably be showing us shortly. But once that's done and you're finished, do you consider that to still be, this is a United Cutlery shards and Ursel, I've just, got a little creative with it? Or is it then in your mind, this is a custom replica It's no longer United's work. You know, they may have had their hand in creating it, but now I've modified it so much that this is now its own thing. You can no longer consider it a UC product. This is my custom replica. Or when it's versus something that it's very lightly touched up, like you showed me your sort of Theodred, where you just added some aging. So that's obviously a much lighter process in terms of time and work that you've put into it. What are your thoughts on that? And then the same question for Mike as well.
Well, I would look at a customized item like that would be, you would sell it, if you were going to sell it, just like something that had damage, you would note anything that was done to it, you know, and that's going to vary from collector to collector and from prop maker to prop maker, because anybody can buy the item and try to do something to it and call it modified. You know, it might become more collectible if it came from a seasoned veteran of somebody that, you know, their work might be at a higher level. But I would definitely consider something like the Shards of Narsil. It's no longer, I mean, it's based on the UC item, but it is no longer even close. Same thing with the Gandalf pipe staff. I've done so much work to that it's not quite the same UC item. It's a lot closer to the weta item, but I wouldn't, you know, call that the weta item, because that one even still has a little better pedigree. But I recently did a lot of modifications to the Witch King's sword. I filled in all of the design work in the handle and painted over it and weathered it to no end. They will no longer look the same side by side. There's that drastic of a difference that it's noticeable that if somebody was going to say this is a UC item, I mean, and I don't modify it so much that I'm taking off the logo of the UC. It still needs to have that mark on it, that it was still an actual licensed item, but just enhanced even more. And that's what I'm after. I'm trying to enhance it to make it to the even more screen accurate if I can. I mean, versus somebody else that might have taken something they've had for 10 years and it's been beaten up and the leather's, you know, scraped away, and it's that's a well-used item. It's not modified to the point of making it look better, in my opinion.
Right. Okay. And Mike?
I agree 100%. I think it depends on the level of customization and the quality of the customization. You know, if you're going to do it, if you're just going to take a buffing wheel and put a shine on the end of a sword, I think it's still a United Cutlery sword, just a little prettier. You know, I've seen specifically one thing on my to-do list is Bard the Bowman's sword around the hilt and the guard. I've seen people take off the finish and basically transform that to look more like Gideon's sword instead of like an orangish paint on the handle. And it's a gorgeous looking finished piece. I think that would be considered, you know, enough customization that it's no longer the original UC Bard the Bowman sword. Recently I took apart and I rewrapped the United Cutlery Sting scabbard. I still consider it a Sting scabbard. I just preferred leather versus the suede finish that was on it. And to answer a question from earlier is I bought two of them. So I do have an original. I have it in the box, and I have one that I took apart, you know, just in case I screwed it up while I was doing it. But it ended up turning out good. So I can understand both sides of it. You know, there's collectors out there that I think want to say they're purists, or, you know, to say like, you know, you have no right to change that. You have no right to do that. And I think it's all through our own eyes. You know, we look at it and we see things a certain way. And if it's in our collection and we want to change it, you know, I promote that anybody that wants to do that. That's how we're talking here. Everybody, you know, just help each other out and, you know, bring better products to the market.
Right. Would you say, like both of you, the main factor that guides your decision when to modify or not to modify a collectible, is it that you want to bring it closer to what you saw on screen? I mean, Weta, you see, they do their best, but Simon, as Kit has explained many times, sometimes it's just not possible or financially feasible for United to go full out in accurately depicting something. You know, certain choices have to be made regarding materials or the shape or the finish on certain things. So I wouldn't call it cutting corners. They're just doing their best to make these things affordable for us. But if you have the opportunity, is that what guides your decision, is to say, like, you know, it looked this way in the movie, and I've got something here that's about 80%, and I feel confident I can go the extra 20 and make it exactly like what I saw, and then that's your mission accomplished.
At least for me, most definitely. But there's still limitations on what you can do to make that 100% accurate. I mean, like we were talking about the Witch King sword, the pommel on there has designs that the actual prop doesn't. So if you wanted to take that to the 100% level, you're going to have to grind that all the way off and then eventually replate that thing. And that's way beyond my expertise. Yeah, there you go. There's an example right there, that if you were going to do that, that you're going to take it to you're going to be either recreating that sword by hand, you know, piece by piece, versus just modifying what you can. And that's usually what, when I look at something, if it's possible to get there, or is it going to be way too much effort to be able to get to that point. And there's some things that I'm afraid to touch, you know, if the value becomes scarce, like if you were going to do anything to the Strider's scabbard, right now it hasn't been reissued. It's really hard to get your hands on those. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do anything to that thing right now, because if I ruined it, I can't replace it.
Understood. Nick?
So the things that I am upgrading, I find that I'm learning to be pickier. There was things that I looked at first, and, you know, at first glance, pull it out of the box, put it on a shelf, I was fine with it. You read an opinion here, you read an opinion there, somebody that you know, respect their opinion tells you something, you start to look at the piece a different way. If it's within my skill set to fix something, I would do it because I want it to look more like the movie prop, yes. And for me, you know what I mean? I want it, this is for my collection, you know what I mean? Not for anybody else's. So, you know, I think that's a nice thing about prop makers and the people. There's a circle of people within the forum and within the groups, and I've not come across anyone yet that is not helpful. You know, it just seems like in other avenues in life that I've been through, you know, doing different things that aren't prop related, there always seemed like there was somebody who wouldn't share a secret with you, or afraid to share something with you because, you know, they don't want you to take away. And everybody that I've come across in this type of environment is more than happy to help you, more than happy to give you a second opinion, or to point out a reason why, you know, they're writing that this is their opinion on a piece. They don't just put it and say, you know, that's my opinion, you know, you don't like it, you know, shove off. They'll tell you and spend the time to let you know why they're putting that. And I hope that answers the question. I tend to go off on tangents, but
Absolutely.
There's a little bit of what you're saying though on the RPF. There's a little bit of, you know, they can call it gatekeeping or whatever, keeping trade secrets themselves, especially people that do large runs, people that are making money off of being a prop maker. Well, some of those people will keep some of those secrets and some of their information, which is a little sad. We all learn from that.
Yeah.
So do you guys think that modifying an existing collectible potentially, like, does it ruin their value or collectability, or does it depend, like if you guys are doing it, I'm thinking it improves the value. You know, it's hard to look at some of your guys' work like Mike's Sting Sheath and think, well, yeah, that's not worth as much as the out of the box, you know, scabbard. But I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on it. Do you think it can ruin it, or do you think it elevates it, or is there, you know, a sweet spot there? What do you guys think?
I mean,
well, at least go ahead.
It I think it depends on who you're asking.
Mhm.
You know, for me personally, if it's a limited edition piece, and I know that there's a really good chance that it's not going to be available again, or if I had to buy another one, I'm going to pay through the nose for it. I don't think that I'd have the guts to modify a limited edition piece. If it's an open edition, and I think that it's enough off that I can improve it, and you know, there's a pretty good chance I'll do it without ruining the piece, I think I'll go at it. And like you said, if it's done well, I can't see the value going down. But I always think that there's going to be somebody out there that, you know, looks at it like an old car and says, you know, this has changed, this has changed. It's not factory, it's not OEM.
Well, it like I said, it really depends, and it's going to be different from. We're prop makers that are also collectors, so we're making things for our own collection. I mean, it might be a little different if you're selling off that piece. I've had people contact me. They wanted me to weather the Theodred sword. So at that point, somebody's paying just for that service to have it weathered. They already know what the sword costs, but they want to have that extra stuff done. So they're after that enhancement for a standard piece as well. But also if a piece is damaged, like my Saruman staff I got from Weta, I'm in the middle of modifying that. When I got it on one of their Black Friday sales, it came damaged. The seam between, I think down closer to the bottom, and it had a big crack in it, and big gap. So they gave me a further discount. And at that point, I didn't mind going full bore. I've cut the fins off. I've taken off all the paint on the orb. I mean, and then repainted it. I still need to finish the orb, but there's things that at that point it's fair game. It was considered damaged or broken already, so it takes a little bit of that weight off of your shoulders. At least for me, as somebody who's going to modify something, it might be different for somebody that wants something pristine and wants it fixed again.
That makes sense. Like I myself have the Witch King's sword, and I picked it up used. You know, it was in pretty rough shape. It hadn't been well cared for, and I thought, you know, this is the perfect opportunity to try and make this more screen accurate. You know, and I rewrapped the hilt to cover that little metal insert in the middle that UC added, and depending on where you look source material wise, there's a gold ring right under the crossguard. On the Master Swordsmith collection one from Weta, there's no gold ring, but if you look at some of the prop reference photos, there's a gold ring. And you know, so I opted to add it. I just thought, well, it's a little different, you know.
It's supposed to be there.
Yeah, you know, and to me that was a great candidate for that. You know, it was in rough shape, and you know, at the time I was a little worried about it because that hadn't been reissued by United Cutlery yet, right? But now it's been reissued, so now I don't feel as, you know. But there was a moment there where I used some cold bluing, and I was like, well, there's no going back.
Nope. But this brings up a whole nother tangent about variations or series of United Cutlery collectibles, because first edition, second editions, third editions, there's so many variations now between first, second, third, how many reissues, from wooden handles to plastic handles to rivet problems on helmets. I mean, there's so many varying degrees of knowing what you have, where it came from, what year it was produced, and then you start to add modified collectibles on top of it. And you kind of really need to do your research. The problem is, though, there's no one good place to go source to find all of that information. You got to really dig. And there's so many people out there that think they have official replicas, and there's so many knockoffs. That's a whole nother.
It almost makes me, because you know, the people sometimes on the forums, they like to you know, people love lists. And there are often threads about, you know, figuring out what all of the United items and their reference numbers. There was somebody that created a thread about the packaging, like the original colored sleeves and what point they changed and what subsequent runs the colors that they went with. I think it'd be interesting if everyone or someone actually went and took on that task of listing all the minute differences and variations between all the different reissues of a lot of the United Cutlery products. Because like you said, yeah, there's been every time they go back and bring something back into retail, and they've had changes in factories, they've had to rebuild some of the tooling and the molds and processes and costs change. They change materials and whatnot.
Besides,
And it often results, like if you take something from the original, the very first run of something and what's currently being sold, there are going to be some market differences between them. So it'd be kind of neat to have some place where you could reference that with photos and make people just aware of what it is that they're buying and how it's changed. I think that'd be a neat project, probably a headache to undertake, but.
well, besides
You're gonna
Kit,
say?
who actually gets production samples, the only person I know
Yeah.
that could even do that would be Christian from Castle Con. He actually
Mhm.
gets supplies in and he opens them up and inspects them for customers, can take pictures at that time. The rest of us usually only get one. We get, you know, the first one, and it's hard to tell. And that's what we've had this conversation before. If somebody gets a second or a third run, they're not able to compare it to the first one. I know it when I look at it and somebody shows up me a picture of a third release or fourth release of something, and I'm like, that doesn't look like mine. That's
Yeah.
not original. I don't know what they changed. Like the new Hadafang, they grind on that is different. You know, same thing with the
Yeah, I
Witch King
remember,
and the
yeah.
ring race swords. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's big differences.
Yeah, okay. So my next question, in crossing over a little bit now into actual custom props, as in not just modifying something that's been out there and made by a company, but actually creating something from scratch, just reference material that doesn't exist in an official capacity. So with those two things in mind, what are your thoughts in general about the custom pieces in your collection as like their place? Do you view them in a completely different way? Do you view them the same? It's just another collectible that's on your wall, or is there a more of an emotional attachment? We as human beings, we get attached because of all the you know, the so-called blood, sweat, and tears that we pour into a project, and you know, that took me this many hours, and I got this scar making that and whatnot. And whereas, you know, all I had to do was go online and push a button, order it, and there's a sword, and I put it on the wall, easy peasy. Where's that line in your mind? Does it matter? Do you care? How do you guys feel about that? We'll start.
Go ahead, Mike.
So I have some collectibles that are custom. Most of the people that I got them off of, I've learned to become pretty good friends with. You know, even though we've never probably had a face-to-face conversation, I've done enough chatting over the last 2 years. So I think it's both. I think it's an extension or an addition to my license collection. I think I appreciate the custom pieces more because I know that it's more difficult for a smaller non-big company to make a custom piece. The amount of time that goes into designing it, to building, you know, even if you're just making one or a couple, the cost and the time to produce that one is significantly more than per piece than the big companies, and they have a lot more resources. You know, we have finite resources. We're not, you know, just unlimited. We could do whatever we want whenever we want. So, you know, having both being on the purchasing side of it and being on the making side of it, I think I just appreciate a custom piece more. I think the attention to detail is better for the most part. You know, and I don't have an issue whether it's a metal prop, a resin prop, a belt. You know, I bought a frying pan that I saw Andrew buy, you know, same thing. And my daughter comes out and she's like, Dad, why do you have a frying pan? I'm like, it's Sam's. What do you mean? You know? So, you know, I appreciate the custom pieces. I do. And, you know, if there was more people out there making them, I would buy more.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I don't have as many that I've bought, mostly like statues from Kyle, or a couple other small props that I've a leather pouch, or a couple of other props, like the indie prop, which we talked about last episode, which is the Red Book of West March, which is a grail, at least to me. I know what went into that, and to me that means a lot. Other pieces that I've made for my collection, Bilbo's desk being part of that, is I know how much effort I put into that and what I wanted it to come out of that. That thing has more value to me. Maybe somebody else will have just as much value to it, but I have a lot because I know every inch of that upside down and backwards. That holds a lot more. Plus, the other part of being a prop maker and being a collector is you try to fill those holes in your collection. So if there's something out there that you can't get your hands on, and I'll try and make it. That's how my list gets huge. I've got so many things that aren't available to buy that I want to be able to make, that I need to, and that's also part of the internal struggle of, it's like, am I going to pay extra for that, or do I just want to spend the time and try to build that? And part of that's a challenge too. Being a creative person, that you like that challenge and something new, a different material to work with. I mean, there's a lot of that that's fun and opens up new doors. So definitely custom pieces have a place in everybody's collection, whether it be small paper props all the way up to the biggest thing you could get your hands on. Anybody that was willing to make you something. But the biggest, I think, caveat of all of that, when you open up the category of custom props in your collection, you could go to Etsy and you can find things that, or somebody just 3D prints and throw some paint on it and call it a custom piece. And I wouldn't consider that the same caliber as some other people that have spent a lot of time and handcraft something. There's a wide range of custom pieces out there. So you one of those other things, you do your research, make sure you know what you're getting.
Mhm.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, so as a newer collector, when I first started collecting, I know I kind of put more of a premium on licensed collectibles. That was, it's like, well, custom's nice, but I'd prefer something that's licensed. As I've gotten more experience, in collecting, and you see the effort that goes into making a custom prop replica, it's hard to think, oh, even though it's not licensed, like, it's the quality is still way up there. And like you were saying, you do have to be discerning on what custom prop maker you're getting your stuff from. A 3D printed Bilbo pipe on Etsy isn't going to have the same quality as someone who's hand carved this, hand fashioned up pipe out of wood, and so I would, the older it seems like, the deeper you get into collecting, the more you wet your toes into the custom stuff.
And it goes far. I mean, people have been making stuff since the movies come out. So 20 years versus of artists making things. People that made things 10 years ago and no longer make it. And those things are only made a dozen of them. They're really hard to get your hands on. Just like you were talking about the peacock quiver. Nobody makes that anymore. It's a custom piece. People would really like to have it. If there was people still making them, they probably still have a lineup of people wanting to order them. So it depends on how long you've been in the collecting game. Some people don't even know those things are out there to collect. Other people know that what is very hard to find or rare, or some of these pieces, or who is even attached to it. And a lot of the reference material that was to even make those things back then was even harder to get your hands on. I mean, digital cameras were horrible resolution, and there was hardly any reference. A still picture from a DVD or even a VHS was what people were using for reference material. We have, technology has gotten so much better. I mean, photogrammetry, I think, which you can actually take and make 3D models from photos now. I mean, technology has come a lot farther now than it did a long time ago.
Definitely. So with that in mind, do you think it would be possible to kind of see a showcase of some of the custom pieces in your guys' collection?
Sure. Do you want me to go or do you want to go, Mike?
No, have at it. I'll go second.
Okay, let me switch this back. Oops. Come on. Let's see. We were talking about the pipe staff. Like I made the pipe, and I also remade the entire the nail that went in there. I made it out of metal, made it out of a bolt. The
Oh,
other one was
nice.
resin, and I put the hole in it, put the leather strap, and I can't do it with one hand. I also carved the rune in it. Let's see, custom pieces, else made stand. It's not quite finished yet, just like a whole bunch of projects that aren't completely done. Let's see, custom plaque for the Aemir spear. That's the Witch King handle. That's custom or modified. Custom piece, the scabbard for the Morgul dagger. Let's see what else. There's the frying pan, which was talked about. I've had to modify the white staff because it was starting to crack. That plagued most of all of the either the resin or the metal ones. Metal ones were even worse, but I cleaned up the mold lines and repainted it. There's the Saruman staff. It's partially done there. Let's see. There's the shards from Narsil. Bilbo's desk.
I see the chair has made an appearance.
Yes, I'm still going through the weathering stages right now. It's you know, there's extra pieces that need wear where the arms, your arms were touching. I mean, something that's been used for decades needs to do that in the right stage, just some of that before it gets stained. So hopefully it'll be done this week. But I mean, this is a whole nother level of just adding props. I mean, I've built so many little pieces to go along with this. This is like building an environment. So I made books. I mean, I've done lots lots of pieces from the windows, and this is probably more than what the average prop. I mean, these are things that, you know, somebody like Andy Mansion that has gone absolutely crazy on building hundreds of items and has resources to do so. But I think the van braces are custom pieces from Leather Lord, from my shield. The boss was made from blind squirrel props, which another one of my very first builds that got me into doing that. And I had bought his horn, which I eventually replaced with the United Cutlery piece. AON shield, one of the boss was the first thing that I had resin cast. I think I did the crown before that, but that was a slightly different. It was pewter casting, which I forgot to planter stand, egg-lows. I could talk. That's a whole story right there. I could talk an hour about the amount of problems I've had with that thing. Well, when you become a prop collector or prop maker, you go down rabbit holes in how you're going to make things and how you're going to reproduce those things. I mean, Mike's got, I'm sure, his own set of stories on making his own crowns and knows what that's like. What's the other things? I mean, we can go over projects, if that was what you were after, or were you actually more customs that were in my collection?
Let's maybe wait for future projects or projects on the go for a little later. Okay. And then, yeah, Mike, if you don't mind showing us kind of some of the custom stuff in your work. Thank you for that, Andrew.
No problem.
So many great things about your collection. Like, you don't even realize they're custom pieces, and that's how a custom piece should fit
Oh, you should-
seamlessly into collections.
Yeah, well,
So
like
this
what
one,
Mike is showing
Andrew,
us right
familiar
now.
with? Does he?
You think that came straight out of United Cutlery, and
Yeah.
it didn't.
Well, the blades are from Andrew, so this piece has a special place for me because we spent countless hours going over the design of the handles and the size of the blades and how things were going to go. So that's one iteration of the Nolder and daggers that I made. I'm working on making some. I'm just going to go back here and turn on some lights. I had them off so I didn't blind you guys with the Zoom call. All right. So this is the Boromir dagger I made. This one is actually made completely out of 3D printed steel. I'm going to do it this way so I could see it. So the blade, the guard, the handle, and the pommel was all 3D printed steel for this one. Polished it, gold plated it, wrapped the handle. Here's a broken down version of the Nolder and daggers. So I bought a CNC machine and basically fourth axis carved the handles. That was rosewood. I ended up choosing walnut for the handles. Lost the head. The blades for the ones I sold were pewter cast. The end cap and the inlays, these are solid brass.
3D printed, right?
3D printed, lost cast. Yep. And
Lost
then this
cast?
is the
Lost cast
so
brass?
Yeah. So Shapeways,
Oh.
when you send them to your 3D model, they 3D print wax, and then they
And-
investment cast the wax with plaster, melt the wax out, and then pour
Oh wow, I thought they
brass into it.
were 3D printed in brass for some reason.
No, they're actually, and you can get a hell of a shine on them. They come, it's a little
Wow.
different. So when
Very
these, in the 3D printed bronze steel, this comes and it still has a decent amount, from the blades,
Yeah.
how many lines are in them. But this is right from them. You can get it polished or unpolished. When they polish it, they take away probably about 0.2 millimeter on the thickness. And if they only did the outside, it wouldn't be so bad, but they polish the inside as well, which I didn't need. So to save a little bit, I get it. This is just not polished from them, and it takes literally minutes.
Wow.
The crown I made with plenty of help and guidance from Andrew. And this, like you said, it's a labor of love. You can't count the amount of hours that we spent. For like the Boromir dagger, I pulled out one of the molds just so you can see kind of what goes into it. This is the mold, one of 5. This was just the mold for the blade. So you think about the time that you have to put in, creating the mold, doing different things. Another project that he started that I, followed behind, I made both the standard Morgul scabbard and the Twilight one.
You can blame Jamie for those.
Yeah. This one is this is the United Cutlery scabbard that I just rewrapped and then I made the belt for. And then this is a custom piece. This was the United Cutlery scabbard, but a custom belt that Jamie made for me for it. And then my frying pan too. So over in the corner, this is one of the pewter ones. Tyler actually has one of these.
I do. I was fortunate enough to be able to get in on that, and I'm very thankful to have it in my collection.
And then one last thing, I don't have many other collectibles in here, but I'll show you what I'm working on over here. I'm actually making Jamie one extra dagger. He's going to have a pair that's going to go with the belt that we're working on together. And these are the scabbards that I'm making for the Nolder and daggers. So, again, we started with just a model that's a little bigger than the blade itself. Leather wrapped them, dyed and aged them, and then just trying to figure out the finish. on the metal parts. This is a resin printed one. And I think this is that's actually brass spray paint. Those finished, but I'm going to try a couple different finishes. I'm going to try to gold or brass plate them. I bought an addition for my plating kit. I'm going to try to put a copper base on the resin piece, and that should allow me to apply brass plating to it.
Very cool.
I'll flip back around. And that's the custom pieces so far. Oh, and the table. Talk about copycatting, right? If they say, what if you're, if you follow somebody and you make it, that's like the biggest form of flattery. Well, feel flattered.
I think we would all like to try and copy Andrew's collection room.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many good ideas, and like,
Yeah.
It's
Trademark
that's well, I don't know if that do me any good because no one's going to pay me for stealing my ideas. There's a lot of people that. Well, it is, and I searched for a long time looking for some sort of inspiration to be able to curate a collection into something else, and I found a little tiny shelf that somebody had, the Sting and the Red Book and the Ring, and it was like, I like that. I would like something a little bit bigger, and that's where my coffee table idea came from. But 2 or 3 pieces wasn't enough. It was like, I need to fill a whole coffee table. I need, what else do you find? And that just started down a whole journey. Most of the stuff you couldn't buy. I bought a few things I could, Bilbo's pipe from Noble Collection, and that wasn't quite right. So I ended up making my own pipe. It just snowballs, and it's necessity or is the mother of invention. So I mean, you find as many things as you can and continue to go. I mean, look at my desk project. It's the prime example of where one thing will start and just kick off and move you into other directions.
Collecting rabbit holes. They are numerous pitfalls.
Oh, there is. And if you don't have enough attention to keep you going, you can definitely be it's good to have projects that keep you going when you get stuck, and you can move on to another one when you have multiple things going on at once. But yes, rabbit holes are definitely what gets us where we are, because you're like, oh, what about this online? And there you go, there's an hour gone.
So what influences your guys' decision making when choosing a specific or specific prop to replicate? Like, do you just, I like the look of that knife and in the movies, or do you have how do you decide what to make? Is it just hold in your collection, or maybe explain that process?
I got a good one for that. I mean, I go through stuff that's not been made, and more importantly, what I don't believe somebody else, like the big companies, is going to make.
Yeah.
There's nothing more fearful than you get involved in something and you're into it for like months, and then all of a sudden United Cutlery, says, hey, by the way, we're going to do this. And that almost caught up with me. That exactly what I was going to say.
That was close.
So it was close. They were done. They were delivered, stuff like that. And then, a couple of weeks later they had it, and people, I believe that they just have always plans on doing that. I'm just grateful that they held off. Do I think that they would still sell? Yeah. And my sizes aren't that big either. And it's not necessarily because I wouldn't want to provide everybody that called me, but, Andrew even said at one point, there's going to come a time when you're a prop maker, when the demand for your piece is going to exceed your ability to produce that quantity. And that's the hard part is, getting people that you're friends with, getting people that, like your stuff, and then having to turn them down when they call you and say, can I get one of those?
Right.
Yeah, that's it's a good problem to have if you look at it that way. I mean, especially if you are continuing to do it, and those help fund other projects. One project will help fund another project and another one, and you keep you going. I don't know how many times I've turned down people asking for Boromir shields. So so much of that stuff is you eventually you start to retract, and you no longer want to share things if it just becomes demand all the time. Some of it is like show what you've done, and some of it is to do runs. I did that, but so much that you could become a factory and not get any enjoyment out of it. And that's where it's not just demand and having to say no, it's your time. So if you are also a collector, you would like to continue to make other objects for your own collection. I mean, that's where it starts. And you're like, well, I can make a few more of these as well for other people. And then you want to move on to another piece. Otherwise, you're going to be a factory making the same things over and over again. And it's not fun.
Or you're a machine like Kyle, and you just churn out like 30 versions of the same environment. You just constantly paint the same thing over and over again. You know, the guy's just a machine.
I don't know how Kyle does it.
A lot of patience and
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for that. So as a newer collector, you know, what do you think newer collectors should consider when purchasing a custom collectible? Let's say, you know, they have the opportunity to purchase something. Are there anything that they should consider before buying a custom replica?
You would have to know what it is, know who made it, what the material's made out of, and the age of it. Those would be the biggest things to me if I was going to buy something, because anybody can make anything. So a little bit of the pedigree of it, or the lineage of where that thing came from. You know, was it some people on the RPF have got castings of screen used pieces. I mean, they can actually prove that they'd bought a mold at auction. So those type of things have got a lot more lineage or provenance through them than somebody that just handmade something out of a piece of foam and painted it. You know, there's a wide range of prop collecting. So you really know what it is, what it's made out of, and if something's 10 years old and has a ton of wear, been repaired a whole bunch of times, yeah, you definitely get lots of pictures and know what you're getting yourselves into. I mean, most of us now have taken things to a whole nother level. I mean, you can 3D print, you can print out beautiful COAs and plaques and display pieces. We're competing with factories, so even more so than we have capables to do one-offs to completely different levels. So make sure, do your research. I mean, for anybody that's looking for something. I mean, there's a lot of people that have an Epic credit card or a checkbook that's willing to buy something, but make sure you know what you're getting yourself into, or ask questions, lots of questions.
Yeah, like, so a good example of the research is, you know, like I purchased Boromir's dagger from Mike here, and like we were mentioning earlier, shortly afterwards, United Cutlery announced they were coming out with their own version, you know, and I have no regrets. This is a great custom piece, and I'm thrilled to have it in my collection. But, you know, somebody who might not appreciate just all the work and time Mike put into that might be like, well, if I had waited a little longer, I could have just got the United Cutlery version, you know. And so the research and going on to places like UC Farms or the Flame of Badoon are great resources to help you decide, like, okay, yeah, this is maybe what is coming down the pipeline, you know.
Prime example right now is Andy Mansion just posted on the forum that, you know, he'd had a hiatus on his Igloo spear that he's been working on. I helped him design his 3D model and had it printed out. He was trying to do a metal casting, and I was hoping that would happen. But in that time that he took in his break, and he's now going to do resin castings, UC's already announced theirs and probably will be out next year. So it's like one of those things, buyer beware. You need to know that information beforehand. You know, unless you really want something by Andy, then you're after that one versus, you know, depends on what you're after. You know, some people like custom pieces, or some people might even want something slightly altered to be more book version versus something movie based. So
Right.
I think too, as a new collector looking to buy in, know your limit. Some of these things, you know, are very affordable. Some of them are not affordable, you know, so know your limit, know what you want to spend on a piece, and buy it because you want it in your collection. Don't buy it because it's a popular buzzword, or, you know, 20 of your friends are buying it online, so you feel like you're obligated to have that piece in your collection. You know, I more got into building custom pieces because I was running out of licensed pieces. You know, a lot of us, you know, in this circle right here are coming to the brink of, you know, just about completing a collection, or, you know, at this point, I'm maybe 4 pieces away from having every piece. You know, so what do you do at that point? Do you stop? No, because there's too much of an appetite, but I'm not going out buying everything, you know, that has a Lord of the Rings name on it either. So, you know, like these guys said, do your research. I'm saying know your limit, know your financial limits, and buy something because you want to buy it. If it's not super important that you have to have that custom piece, chances are somebody's going to do it again. Or maybe United Cutlery. I mean, they've been churning out new pieces consistently lately, and I'm a fan of it. I like all the new stuff that they're bringing. And even though all the, say, the top names and top pieces have all been picked off 1, 2, 3, 4 versions of it, there's a good amount of swords from pretty brand name actors in the movie that have not been released yet that I'm looking forward to. And I hope that they keep bringing new pieces out. So
Mhm.
I'm going to keep my eyes open for custom pieces. I'm going to keep my eyes open for licensed pieces. And if it's something that's made, that's quality, and I don't have it in my collection, I'm going to go at it. You know, but different people have different wants and different needs, and, you know, even space limitations.
So
Definitely.
just as a little bit on what you guys just said, and so with the example of the Boromir dagger, and Andrew just spoke about Aglo. So let's say the United announcement had been made just as you're ramping up to do yours, Mike, or you're halfway through creating those. What effect does that have? Do you feel like you should just stop, give up, or you've put too much time and thought into it and there's no turning back? You're going to make these regardless. Your customers are expecting them. Would you consult with them and say, hey, I'm sure you guys saw the announcement. Are you still in, or am I just wasting my time here? And conversely, if the piece is already made, as in the example of the Boromir dagger, and then United puts out their own official product, would you still buy it?
I will. Yeah, absolutely. I and again, it goes back to what I said earlier. It's a weird scenario being a collector of this type of goods. And in this scenario, me and Andrew, we're technically competitors, but we're friends. And same with Andy Mansion, and same with Jamie Shakespeare, and same with Raymond. We all chat, and we can just, you know, I think there's a mutual respect, you know, like we kind of pull each other, say, what are you working on next? What are you working on next? So Raymond already created the Grima dagger. I have it. I have it in resin. I love it. It's on my wall. I would love to have a steel one. I don't see myself ever doing that. If you see where to create one, would I buy it? Yes. Would I get rid of Raymond's? No. You know, so I like the fact that United Cutlery is releasing Boromir's dagger, because there was a good amount of people who contacted me, and still to this day, you know, see a post on a forum or see, you know, something, and send you a message. Hey, I just saw your piece. You know, do you still make these? Can you make me one? I had a lady, you know, I think it might have been last Christmas. You know, I'm looking to get something for my husband for Christmas. You know, he's one of those guys you just don't know what to buy from. And, you know, you kind of feel bad at the point where you're like, you know, I made 14 of those. And that was right at the limit of what Andrew said earlier. You know, I got to the point where it felt like a job. I have 2 jobs already. I have 3 daughters. You know, I got enough work that I don't want to turn my love of this content into another job. So I appreciate everybody. But to answer your question directly, I don't think I made a promise to the people that bought my crowns. I made 7 of them total. I sold 6. That each new piece that comes out, those 7 people, including myself, get the first grabs, first right of refusal. They got first dibs on the Boromir daggers. They took them. They got first dibs on the Noldorin daggers. They took them, and basically said, whatever you got coming out, provided it's the same quality, and we'll keep going. So I think I have a good enough following with my little runs that I'm not really too concerned if another company were to come out and have one. I think that's just better for the rest of the population to be able to get their hands and have one in their collection.
A good example of that too, Valkyrie, that scenario is the Doctor's Doors of Durin. It's a great collectible. I have it. And then, as I got thinking, they were starting to come out. It was like, there's only so many environments for the Fellowship of the Ring for Weta to do. I wouldn't be surprised if they did the Doors of Durin, and then lo and behold, they did right in the middle of his production, and I'm sure he was pretty bummed about it, but there was a lot of people that preferred his version. And I have it. I still plan on picking up the Weta version just because there's aspects of that one that I like. But it's great for everyone to have the opportunity to get the Doors of Durin now in their collection if they want. And like with Boromir's dagger, was I a little bummed that I had one of 14. I was pretty, that's pretty cool. That's the smallest edition size I have in my collection. So yeah, the selfish part of me was like, oh man, I had this really exclusive piece, and now it's still exclusive, but everyone else, but the other part of me, and especially being a newer collector, I'm just happy that other people are going to now have the opportunity to add Boromir's dagger to their collection. I'm happy with the one I have, and I'm glad that other people now have the opportunity to get one as well. So
yeah, it's an interesting dichotomy for myself as a collector. I don't make props. I don't have the talent for it. I do love to own them. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there when you say there's a brief moment of jealousy. Like for years, I've prided myself on the fact that I own one of only 2 Aigloses that Andrew made, one of only 2 Boromir shields that he made. So when I hear that another, whether it be a company or another prop maker, say, I think it was a while back that Buffalo Bill got into making the Boromir shield. And I felt that moment of, man,
I don't know what happened to him.
Yeah, I haven't heard from him in a while. But it was a strange moment when you feel that status of being special being taken away, because as long as the company doesn't produce that, as long as other prop makers don't get into making that one particular item, you put your pictures of your collection up on the forum and everybody goes, wow, where did you get that? Because it's just not commonly out there. Yeah. And so, yeah, there's that moment where you're like, well, let me tell you, and you're so proud of that. And then suddenly someone announces a run of a particular item, or the company then decides that they are going to tackle that prop finally. And it's like, oh, well, there goes my moment in the sun. But it's like you said, it's a brief feeling. I think we're all very good people in this community, and we all look out for each other. And like you guys were saying, everyone's always so helpful. So that moment of jealousy evaporates rather quickly, and it's like now everyone can have this and experience what I've been lucky enough to have had for years on my wall. Everyone gets to have one because these things are just so cool, and I think everyone should be able to get them. So
I gotta throw
last
in
thoughts
one
on
thing
that,
too.
Oh, sorry. Go, Mike.
So I consider myself a new prop maker, right? I'm only doing this in my sophomore, my third one, so my junior year. And it's partially terrifying because we are a vicious group, like vicious with details and with, if you're not doing it 110%, right, they're gonna weed you right out, and 100,000 people are gonna be, marching the forums and posting everything bad, so it's a great feeling when somebody looks at something you made and says thank you and wow and stuff like that. And then there's parts throughout it where you're holding your breath saying, I hope I do this right, just because if not, you know, it's your reputation, it's everything about it. So I think we have a little more control over the end product. So I do get a little defensive when some people like start digging in and, you know, going against United Cutlery and different stuff to a point, because they have a lot bigger burden. They have to make thousands of pieces spread out over multiple, you know, factories, whatever it ends up being, and so many hands that, do I believe that shoddy work should get out there? I really don't. But I think that me or Andrew or somebody else that's making 3, 4, 5 pieces, you know, we have a lot better successful chance of doing it because our hands are physically touching every piece that we made. We control the quality, we control everything about this piece.
There's a little bit of difference from that too. Each one could be slightly different because they are handmade. Each one has, like, if I'm going to make a handle for something that I don't have the CNC capability, so it's going to be made by eye. Something that's going to be 100%, you know, they're going to be as close as possible unless you had 2 of them side by side. They're going to be slightly unique. But when you're talking about discerning collectors, those are people with money and they want the perfect item that they saw, or they want the photoshopped promo image of whatever they're getting on the box, and they open it up and it's not quite the same thing. When you're talking about discerning collectors, there's very much so. They look at every detail, but they're just, I got money, I want to pay for it. Or when we were talking earlier about multiple iterations of the same thing. I mean, statues are the same. How many different companies right now do we have making the exact same thing? How many Witch Kings can you buy right now? Put on pre-order. So you might order one and then 3 months later, another one comes out and they're like, well, do you cancel your order and you go after this one? If we had more than one manufacturer producing swords and helmets competing with United Cutlery, I think that would be good to have some sort of competition, and you might actually up or lower the quality of something for that. But we are discerning for prop collectors, but or even prop makers. I mean, everybody's after making something unique or even taking their own take on something. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen the Sauron finger done. Raymond's done, I think, multiple iterations himself, and I've seen multiple other creators try it. I've seen 3D models to something like what I've done out of metal. I mean, there's a lot of inspiration, and if anything, that's probably the biggest part of what everybody takes from it is inspiration from, like, I want that, or I want to take a step at that.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for your thoughts on that. Moving right along, we got a little sneak peek there at Mike's Nolder and scabbards for his daggers. What can you guys share with us about the projects that you have currently on the go?
You want me to go?
Let's go first.
Nothing.
Dead silence. It's a secret.
I'm going to switch here real quick.
Okay.
Whoops. I've got a
I'm going
few.
to close my eyes so that I don't take on any more projects.
Oh, very cool.
This goes into a little bit of, you know, how props are made and what I go through. You know, I'll make a prototype. This one's made out of wood, MDF, solid handle, you know, tooling foam, you know, and then to be able to, I recently bought a grinder, and Mike talked about the ones I made for the Nolder and dagger, but here's my ring race blade. This is just made out of mild steel, and it's one of the first things that I've ground. But
It looks great.
some other people might know what these are. These are old. Before I moved, I was planning on doing a run of these. These are all my masters of the Rohan spear and the Gondorian spear. And after looking at it more, I think the blade should be longer on that, and I might actually alter that. The Moria Orc sword, something that I figured I wanted on my wall, and I had some free time. See, this is one of those things where I got stuck. I got to a certain point and was like, how do I want to finish this? Everything I find is slightly different. Is it all rusty? Is it actually metal with rust on it? I mean, there's making decisions on some of those things is what tackles you to move on to something else. Same thing with this. I haven't quite sure to make a sign out of it. I kind of thought about making an end table and like an epoxy pour over it, like a blue background, and put the stars and the crown in there, you know, something else that way. Something that me and Mike actually printed this out for me. It's a giant one ring that I want to embed LEDs in and have the inscription light up and have it on a base.
Oh yeah, cool.
So there's millions of other projects that are in iteration, and one of the other things we were talking about was things that you were going to work on, and you heard about it. Like I was going to do the Gimli axes, sorry, and as soon as I found out that United was going to do it, I stopped. You know, I've got multiple iterations of things I've worked on my computer that I've started to work on, and then you either stop or move on to something else. There's always something else to move yourself onto.
Yeah. So for any viewers that might not be aware, those are the two throwing axes, which are the only two out of the 5 axes that Gimli carried in the movie. Those are the only 2 that United never got around to, and it finally seems like they're going to commit to it, which is pretty awesome.
I'm finding that out first time here, and I'm a big fan of that idea.
Well, I know Jamie made them, and I know that Andy Mansion has already had prototypes of those too. I mean, it was part of his list of things to make out of metal. So yeah, it's one of those things that you get to if you wait too long.
There's one.
I got a color photo on my wall. That's how much I want it.
I was gonna say that looks a little 2-dimensional. Is that a stencil or
that's
that's a
print.
placeholder? That's awesome. You got a place ready for it already.
Augmented reality.
Yeah.
That's it. Turn the lights
So what
down
about you,
low,
Mike?
it doesn't
What do you
look so
got?
bad.
What do you got going? Anything else beside the scabbards, or are you more of a one project at a time kind of guy?
I try to do one project at a time, and I try to do it in stages. As you see, I printed all the sleeves. I'm going to wrap all the sleeves. If I finish one, then it's like moving a TV into a new house, right? You just stop. So I don't want the happiness of being done until they're all done. And that, kind of helps me out. So in addition to the scabbard, I've been talking with Jamie, and he started production on the belts. So we're going to do scabbards and the Noldorin belt, which is a 3-piece design. He's working hard on it, and it looks fantastic. And then I don't know if I could share my screen here, but we have concept pieces on the buckle and the metal tip, and we're just discussing how to do that. In previous pieces, we 3D printed bronze steel. There's a stainless steel version that's available right now, but believe it or not, with the cost of steel being up, the solid brass pieces are only like $10-15 more. And the buckle for the Noldorin belt is 2-tone. There's part of it that's silver, there's part of it that's like a goldish color, but I think I'm going to try one buckle for mine in solid brass. The piece that is supposed to be gold colored, I'm going to polish that. And then the other side, I'm going to silver plate so that it's 2-toned. And we're still working out the details as far as who does what, but Jamie's going to physically make all the belts. And I know at least I'm going to have one, he's going to have one, he's going to make one available to a couple other dagger owners that have already contacted him about them. So those 2 projects we have front and center. When I'm done
For
with
those that
that,
don't know Jamie actually is a professional prop maker. He works in the UK.
Oh, okay.
He actually does film and TV shows. I think he worked on Game of Thrones. I think he might have done work on The Witcher. He's a professional. He's got access to all sorts of
Jamie
equipment.
actually works for Netflix.
No,
And
Netflix?
He worked with the Witcher series. So I wish I had a picture of his belts. He's made a belt for just about every piece so far. And I have his Anduril belt. I'm going to be after him. I know, the cost of everything's up, but he made Gandalf the blue scabbard belt, the white scabbard belt. He made a strider belt with all the components and everything that go on it. He made a belt for Orcrist. You know, he's a fantastic leathersmith. He made his own Boromir scabbard and Boromir belt to go with his Weta Master Collection Boromir sword.
Yeah, and it's fantastic looking.
It is. It's like mouthwatering.
Yeah.
One thing I want to do, and I don't know how big it will be, is I always like the look of the Noble Collection sting handle. The vines are partially recessed and partially raised. I just prefer that.
The handle is recessed, the wood part is recessed, and the vine is raised.
Yeah. So what I thought about doing is taking, I believe in one of the Peter Lyon videos, I saw that he made his out of cocobolo wood.
Yep.
And I wanted to have a go at 3D turning a replacement handle for the Sting Master Collection sword. And then
You won't get that
inlaying-
off.
I had mine off once already.
You really? It should be
Yeah.
epoxied all the way through.
It was loose and I had it off, I polished it, and I just threaded it back on without
Wow.
regluing it.
Wow.
Yeah. So the guard was a little loose, and that's, you know, exactly, I read what everybody said and just turned it off and then, you know, came out. But even at that point, I might take a stab at, you know, retrofitting an existing one. But my thoughts were to try to turn a handle and do a silver inlay for the vine.
Wow.
And again, that would just be a one-off, you know, me and whoever, but just to try to push the limits of what I can actually do and see the limitations of the CNC. And then I wanted to get a little forge. My last big buy was the CNC machine. That's done. I did a job with it. You know, I'm either going to get a laser module for the CNC so I can, you know, do more intricate stuff that way, or get a small forge for the shop that I could start melting metals beyond, you know, 800 degrees or whatever I can get in the current one.
So is there, obviously Andrew's got a whole bunch of stuff in on the go in various stages of development. Mike, you're obviously busy currently working on one project, and you just spoke about modification that you would like to make, but is there one project that's kind of looming on the horizon for you guys that you could share with us? The next thing that you've thought of that you really want to get into?
I've got so many things that I've started or haven't. The main reason that I actually bought my grinder, my 2x72 grinder, was to make the other weather top plates. I wanted to cut those out of steel. And I don't think United Cutlery will make those. And I know Raymond had made them out of resin, but I really wanted something to match the MC Sam sword to go with the rest of those. That's pretty far on my list. I would like to weave my own mithril shirt, but that's one of those things too that I look at it a lot of times, and there's a lot of firsts. Besides knitting chainmail that small, is also all the embroidery that goes, all of the stitching that goes around the neck, and that is a tedious thing. It's one of those things that I think was one of your other questions, is something I wish I would have, or I regret passing on, was one of Thranduil's mithril shirts.
Yeah, I have his first one, and well, I think I have the first one he made after his prototype, I think, if I remember correctly. But he infamously complained about needing a set of new fingers and eyes after he was done putting that together.
Well, he even bought sheets of all the woven rings already, and still had the painstakingly.
And he swore up and down that he would not make another one, but I think he succumbed to pressure. I think he eventually ended up making about 4 more, I think.
Yeah.
That made their hands into various lucky collectors. But I have that first one, and I consider myself extremely lucky to have that.
Yeah, or Lothrorian bow. We talked about this last time. Something that I missed out on, that you know, it's right up my wheelhouse of something made out of wood that I can definitely make and see myself doing. And that's usually what pushes a lot of my projects, something that I know I can accomplish, but every once in a while there's things outside of, you know, I'm gonna have to buy another tool, or I'm gonna have to acquire another skill. Like I think if there's something that comes to it that I'm eventually gonna have to learn to 3D model and 3D print. I mean, there's definitely gonna come a day that I'm gonna have to learn that when I run out of things that I can't or not feel confident enough to be able to make out of my hands.
Right.
So, those are my biggest ones, besides what other things that are already in the middle of being thought about and partially progressed on.
Sorry
Very
guys,
cool.
I have automatic lights here. It's 9 o'clock where I'm at. Lights are starting to
You're
turn off, doors are starting to lock.
But the bartender's made last call.
Yeah. I have a home kit. It's pretty good, but I think they'd be able to detect that you're still in the room. I have a couple pieces that I've wanted to do, and now that I'm getting more comfortable with leather work. I would really like to have a go at Sam's sword scabbard. It's pretty detailed. It's got like a woven stitching on it. And then also I have Andy Manchin's version of the borrow blades. I'd like to go at the scabbards for the other 3. So have the 4 blades in a row and then have that scabbard for every one of them. The cores can be 3D printed. You wrap it with leather, and then, you know, the metal work, depending on how you make the pieces. If they're small enough, you know, it's expensive, but I'm a fan of the 3D printed metal versus going through the trouble and then obviously the hazard, you know, of working with molten metal and stuff like that. If it's a couple pieces or just a piece for myself, I would go through that trouble and I would try to make them. Because like Andrew said, I don't think I'm going to get my hands on it would be a pleasant surprise if UC did release the borrow blades, the other 3. But then I don't know if it would be cost effective for them to do scabbards to go with them.
It's hard enough to get them to do scabbards for the regular swords.
Yeah, and I think Kit has mentioned a couple of times, like, because I'm one of the people that often pipes up and bugs them about the especially the elven scabbards, like scabbards for Hadafang and the elven warrior sword. They're so beautiful, have such intricate detailed vine work on them, but he's fessed up to say that to do them justice, it would be a very, very costly item, almost nearly twice the cost of one of the swords. And I don't think for the population collecting world out there at large, I don't think they would understand. Like, they would be like, why does a scabbard cost more than a sword? How is that? So not understanding some of those processes that could sink the.
I didn't believe that until I built one. When I did the
feasibility, yeah.
Boromir dagger and the Boromir scabbard, I'm like scratching my head at the amount of time that went into making, wrapping, you know, finishing a scabbard. And then I appreciate it more when you see, because I always got sticker shock when you would look at, say, I think the first Weta Master Sword one I saw the price and saw that it was available might have been Eowyn's sword. And then you see that the cost of the scabbard is equal to the cost of the sword. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how could that
How is
be?
that possible? Yeah.
Until you actually go through the motions and try to build one. And then it's like, all right, I kind of understand.
Yeah.
Yep.
So are there any kind of props you guys would like to replicate, but you just don't have the space or the tools? It's just not feasible for you to take on at the time, but somewhere down the road, you know, there's just something that you really want to make, and, you know, hopefully one day you get a chance to make.
The list is really long. It's space. Like, there's a whole bunch of shields I'd like to make. I had actually started a long time ago on the Royal Guard shield, but it's big. It's bigger than the Boromir shield. It takes up a lot of room. More helmets. I'd like to, you know, try to make a helmet. I've looked at quite a few different 3D prints. I've looked at, sculpting them by hand, whether you even making them out of sheet metal. But I would also need a welder, one of those things that are on my list of things to eventually purchase. But helmets take up quite a bit of room, especially no matter how you display them, whether on a stand or on a shelf, whether you hang them on a wall, they take up a fair amount. I mean, and then there's always, if you had money at your disposal and you could do whatever, an armor would be amazing to have, a full suit of armor from Gondor to Rohan to, some of the, Sauron armor to Ring Wraiths. It'd be awesome, but like you would need a whole room to display a museum, something like that. But
Yeah.
I mean, there's, like I said, the list is insanely long and it changes daily. I mean, it looks like a ticker tape on something you see where it constantly, it's a commodity where it changes hourly and daily.
I would like to have definitely Boromir Eowyn shield, maybe Theoden shield. But luckily I'm out of room right now. And that has to be backburnered, until I think I can pull off, the Boromir shield. Certainly it's within the skill set to be able to do it. It's just further down the list. I definitely am going to try the Palantir stand. That's like just one of those things where you see it and it's like, that's so cool. I gotta have
Full
that.
size?
No, just the top.
Like 5 feet
thought
tall?
about, honestly, well, here's the thing. I thought about getting just a sonotube just to create like the basic shape and then just foam edges. You create, I think, 2 or 3 different variations, go around, slap a top on it. And then there was pufferfish, I think, is one. They actually have a cylindrical TV. It's a display that they use with an Xbox One Connect. And when you walk up to it, the eye comes and looks at you and it's, I see you. So it's like you can, like you said, if money was no object, you can have that stuff, you can do it. But I'd settle for a tabletop. I absolutely would. I think it's cool. And who's the Jim Lowe? He makes the blue
Dream Spears.
Yeah, Dream Spheres. I mean, I think that I would buy the blue one. I think it looks good. I think, matter of fact, when I visited Ben's collection, he had one in there and I held it and I was like, oh, this is cool. I got to do this.
I would love to make the full size one, like I think a guy could do it out of polystyrene. And like I posted on the Ask Daniel thread, but like seeing these planetary lamps, like they light up, they look like a Palantir, they're just a different color, right? Like, a guy could take one of those and make if he didn't want to do the Dream Sphere one, you could do one that kind of lights up, and I would love to make the full size one. It's on my list. I'm not a prop maker, but it's on my list in the future to tackle. So
I mean, you could do like a base coat with some bed liner and get like a textured coat on it. I mean, it truthfully, it would be a project, but it's not like you have to be like magic to be able to do it. I think you could pull it off.
Yeah, I think
but it would be big. You know what I mean? It's like a bar table, in the middle of the room.
Yeah.
You bring people over, serve drinks on the outside of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
So what resources and source material do you guys tend to use when looking for references for your projects? And there's stuff, are there stuff you would recommend to those thinking about creating their own custom replicas? What do you guys where do you guys look?
There's 2 schools of thoughts here on are you looking to become a prop replicator, or are you looking to you're already handy enough to make props and you want to make things and you now want to make props? There's 2 different schools there. One you need to have at least some fundamental background on building things and knowing how to use tools.
Yeah, definitely.
I started off as a DIY person. After I bought my first house and did a lot of renovations, you learn how to use tools and materials. And then after those projects are done, you look for other things to use your tools on. So whether it be built-ins around your house, or you start making props, and then it's what you're going to make, what you feel comfortable on making. I make a lot of things out of wood because I have a lot of it that's accessible around, and it's usually fairly easy to work with. But there's tons of resources now. Today, you're in a renaissance of being able to be a maker in any form. If you're a digital maker, there's so many ways to, you know, from video game assets to movie information to physically, you can make 3D print, you can 3D mill on CNC, you can laser, there's so many different avenues to go through to make something now, that it's not just, I have to sculpt it out of clay and mold and cast it. That was kind of how most things were done at one time. That was the only way you did it. It was very, very expensive. Now you name it. People make things out of cardboard. I mean, and do amazing things out of cardboard and foam. I mean, anybody that you've seen miniatures and tabletop stuff, they make it out of that XPS foam. I mean, you can make some amazing things and hard coat it and make, I mean, they make gigantic full-size prop. I mean, you've watched all the appendices stuff on the Lord of the Rings. They made so many things, the bigatures, out of styrofoam that was, you know, hot wire cut and hard coated and finished and rocks. I mean, the sky's the limit when it really comes down to it. But if you want to go down for resources, YouTube, RPF, and if you're looking for resource, actual photos of props, auction photos is a good place to find. I mean, they're few and far between, especially for Lord of the Rings. The appendices have got stuff, and every once in a while you'll find things on forums or random Google searches. If you're up in the middle of the night looking for stuff, go down that rabbit hole. And I've done it, and that's usually how I ended up with my Moria orc sword. Just found some random picture. I found a picture that was right next to the Uruk-hai scimitar, and I'm like, oh, now I know exactly what size it is. So now I can scale it and make it, and that's how that happened. Like within a couple of days. It's one of those things. It's like wasn't on my to-do list. It just showed up. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, definitely.
And I do the same thing. I look online. I spend a lot of time online. When I was doing the Boromir dagger, I found a picture of a prop that sold on Julian's auction. It was one of the pieces that sold, and I think I was able to find a picture with something in it that we're able to reference the size, because that's always a hard thing too. There's actor scale, there's different, you know, what one are you making, what variation. When we were doing the Noldrin daggers, I saw a table. Andy Manchin pulled out a picture of a table, and it must have had 40 daggers on the table. Half of them were one size, half of them were the other one. And again, you know, you can't really make it out because at the time it might have been 35 millimeter film. That might have been watched on a TV that was low resolution, taking a picture with a cell phone and then texting, you know, like the over time pictures of it. I found some good pictures online, just doing random like Google searches and stuff like that, and just ask people on the forums. Like if you're on the UC forum, the Flame of Voodoo, like any one of them, there's art sections in there. You just go there and you say like, does anybody know how to do this? Anybody have a picture of this? You're bound to get somebody in your inbox that says, yeah, you know what, I thought about doing that, or here's a good picture that I found of this. I did that with the belt buckle. It ended up being in a book. I saw a picture of a picture, and then I went online and found the Fellowship, the Two Towers, and the Return of the King books in a used bookstore. I got all three books for like $30. It cost more to ship them than the books. And the books now, if you were to buy them new, were like $60-$70, you know, for the books. So just look around. I mean, you're gonna find the stuff, or just ask. There's plenty of people out there that spend plenty of time online cataloging, doing different things.
Definitely.
Right. Yeah. So talked about all between like what the companies put out and you guys yourselves being prop makers. You've got a lot of ground covered already. It's either out there or you have the ability to make it. Well, most of it, but you do represent just a slice of the larger prop making community at large out there. And we talked briefly about the example of Andrew Hulton's Mithril chain shirt. Is beyond that for you, Andrew, and also for yourself, Mike, are there other prop replicas, custom made ones made by other craftsmen out there that you guys regret passing up on? Because as we talked about, the runs are small. We are either often not aware of them, or by the time we understand that something is actually out there, it's, there were 10 made or whatever, and they're long gone. There's just not an opportunity to track those down unless the one of the original owners decides to pass it on. And then you have to be there at the right time to know of it and get it, because they go fast when they do pop up, which is rare. So looking back, the things that you have missed out on that you don't maybe intend to make yourself, what's your biggest regret?
I don't have a whole lot. Like I said, the Menthol shirt was one of them, and probably the Peacock quiver would be a pretty high on that list. But since I never got the Lothlorien bow, it wasn't like I need this to complete a collection. It was pretty high on there. And we've mostly been only talking about custom props and modifying in those, but still custom collectibles still follow in the same line as Kyle's work of miniatures and environments. And there's a couple that I forgot to get. In the last one, the Gondor beacon, I should have gotten on my name on that list, especially after the modifications that you've been doing, Tyler, to light up fire. That definitely puts it over the edge. And that's part of customizing. You end up doing with statues too. I mean, we went over a little bit of that with my quarter scale bust. Anything that you can do that would be slightly to modify either your collection to make it unique or to enhance that piece to make it a little bit more movie accurate. That's part of the modification or customization. But I don't have a whole lot. I don't have as much as the regret as I've moved on in my elder years of things. I'm okay with letting things go, and I'm okay with passing on the amount of things. I've come to that season in my in my years that I will be able to fade away and be okay.
Well, Mike?
Like I said, I'm late to the game. I regret not being involved like this earlier. I'm in construction for 27 years, 28 years, and I just work a lot. I was always doing different things. I love the movies. I watch them every year, the week of my birthday, like routinely. I can basically say like to the point now where I'm sure everybody else, lines are coming up and we're saying the lines before they're actually saying them on the screen. You just know the movies inside out.
Yeah.
But knowing that there was even a community out there that you can see things like this and go through lists and find out what you have. The Lothlorien bow was on my list, and then luckily enough, Achilles Pocket Reef on the forum had a flood in his basement, and he had to rush some stuff upstairs, and after that he ended up downsizing his collection. And we chatted a few times, and I'm in Pennsylvania, he was in Connecticut at the time, and he ended up getting rid of his elven shield, his Lothlorien bow, and a custom piece from Acro Workshop. It was the Iron Hills shield and a couple other items. And he's like, "Are you interested?" I said, "I will be there tomorrow." And my dad and me jumped in my van and we drove to Connecticut. We toured his house and everything. Nice guy. And I came home with a truckload of parts, and the bow was one of them.
Cool.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's being there at the right place at the right time. Sad that it was someone's misfortune that got you all of that stuff, but it's how these things get passed along. Sometimes there's a story behind it all. So
I think it was
Okay, over to Tyler.
geographically too. Like I might have been the
Oh, yeah,
closest, the closest collector to where he lives, because to try to box that stuff up and take the risk of shipping it or even the cost of shipping it, I think just, you know, would have taken a lot longer or taken on a lot more risk.
yeah. Well, that actually reminds me about this happened not that long ago. Actually, there was there's a member on UC forums and Flame of Voodoo as well, Strider's Heir. He he's always, like most of us, I regularly go on my local Craigslist to see whether people are selling collectibles. Sometimes people don't actually know the exact value of certain things and they'll list it for cheap, and that's always an opportunity. Or sometimes the price is reasonable, but mainly because it's local, it's like, oh, thank God I don't have to deal with shipping or anything like that. But he contacted me once and said he ran across there was an estate sale going on. I believe it was either Arizona or New Mexico. He's in California, and he sent me the photo for the estate. There was a room filled with, you remember this, Andrew? You're nodding like this sounds familiar. Yeah, there was a massive pile of weta, sideshow weta boxes. I don't remember if there was UC stuff in there. I think there might have been a couple of things outside of the statue collection. Yeah, I think there were some helmets and things. And he said, I have the opportunity to drive over to this place and pick these up. And I think he entered. He began to talk to the probate lawyer or something like that, because he was asking me, because there was no way that he wanted most of that stuff, but if he could facilitate the purchase himself, he would then let it go to those of us that he knew in the community for basically the cost of his trouble, and just not inflate the price of the item, not go beyond what he was paying for it, because there was a sense there that all of that stuff was not priced to what it was actually worth. Sadly, it fell through, but there was a moment there. Yeah, because one of the pieces that I spotted immediately was the ring wraith on steed, the original one from Sideshow Weta, which is not easy to track down, and it's quite expensive when you do find it. Luckily, I've since acquired one, but at the time, and when he quoted me the price that he would give me for it, I'm like, man, make this happen. But sidebar there, but just
you can do it.
Yeah, it ended up not happening. Somebody was lucky enough to make off with all that stuff. I hope they knew what they had and appreciated it. But yeah, it's just knowing of these things when they happen and being there at the right time. And sometimes there's some pretty awesome opportunities out there. And then once in a while, you see somebody selling their collection on eBay for like $1 million or something ridiculous like that. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. You got some nice stuff there, but if these were props from the movie, maybe, but I can tell that those are United and Weta stuff, and it's just not worth what you're asking. So anyways.
So guys, what other artists in the Lord of the Rings collecting community inspire you, or really motivate you to go and get in your workshop? Are there guys out there that just, you see their work and you're just flabbergasted, you're just amazed, and that just
there's a lot of inspiration, at least for me. I mean, but it's not just the Lord of the Rings community. I mean, if you're going to be a prop maker, you're eventually going to start branching out into all sorts of other makers to find out different techniques and how to do something, whether it be a video on YouTube from something you might randomly come across them, or the RPF is a huge inspiration for every type of prop maker, not just a particular property. But some of the notable people that I've followed over the last decade and watched their work was Vulpin Props, which is now, he started off in his garage. You might have seen him on Tested, and he works in the industry. He's a professional. Started off just like one of us in our garage. Mike from Blind Squirrel Props, he's one of the very first people I found doing blogs online, and you could actually see breakdown tutorials on how he would build something, and start from the very beginning, from reference material and what he uses for his material and what tools he used, I built my Boromir shield based on the same techniques that he did. I mean, those are things that you could, break your teeth on. And that type of information isn't readily available. And then to have somebody to put it on a blog at some time, it is extremely helpful. I mean, pictures do so much more than just somebody trying to write down a whole bunch of list of information. Another one when I started molding and casting was Punish Props. He's from up in Seattle. He's fairly close. He's mostly a foam smith, makes a lot of cosplay stuff, but he began doing all sorts of creations of, you name it, molding and casting, peppercorn to 3D printing, laser cutting, everything. There's a wealth of information. And then there's everyday makers that, like Adam Savage, or if you're on YouTube, Jimmy DiResta is a huge inspiration for somebody that I've followed for a very long time. But we all take inspiration from, like Raymond and Andy Mansion, and there's quite a few other ones. I was trying to mention, Mundo DVD was the other thing I was going to mention. It's a Castilian forum. But there's so many makers that were over there that you don't get. I think a Saga was probably the only one you might actually recognize on our forum on Flame of Odin. But there was I found my Isildur scroll over there. I found my Bjorn Gopher chess piece. So there's the Claw of Smog. There's lots of things that were found outside of the United States, other forms of people that are making things that don't necessarily show up so much in our everyday running into things. So you gotta get creative and find out what other people are posting, or look outside the box. But there's lots of people out there.
So for me, same thing. I look a lot online. I look at a lot on the forum. I browse the art section. Andrew and Raymond definitely are probably the first two that I came across when I came in. Raymond's artwork, I was seeing it on all different types of places. He had originally made concept art for the Blue Wizards. He had 3D modeled their staffs, and I just seen so many concept art pieces from him over the years, and see how he just makes them in his shop and then just churns out different things. Andrew's collection, like just one of them things where you look at it and you say, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to stop watching because I got too much to do already and I can't figure out what he's doing next because they don't want to do that. Andy Mansion, Jamie Shakespeare, those two I talk to probably 3-4 days a week, every week, year round. Acro Workshop, I think he's putting out some good pieces. He did a full piece or a full body of armor, the Fountain Guard armor. He did the helmet, he did the entire suit. So, and then there's a guy on Facebook who we've been chatting a little bit with, Harvey Harrison. He's mostly foam and 3D printing, but I mean, the way he paints these pieces and he photographs them, I envy sometimes when people can paint stuff that is just general, but make it look like it would be. He's making a full Sauron suit of armor, and he's got the chest, he's got the one arm done, he's got it's just crazy, what people can do nowadays and make. And whenever you see something different, and that doesn't discount the statue collectors like Kyle, Dr. Malcolm, Andy Me, all these people that you see on there that are doing their own form. That's all inspirational too. That for me is just not something. I don't build statues and I don't build environments and stuff like that. I buy them, and I bought some stuff from Isaga, and it's just every ounce of it is all good stuff. Like Tyler said, I have Dr. Malcolm's Westgate, and I have the first one. He sent me, I made an agreement with him, and he sent me his first piece. So, that's another piece that I have in my collection that, even though Weta came out with one, I do prefer his more over it. And the fact that, we had an agreement I was able to get his first one, that means more to me than just a standard piece. Because I watched him on the forum, start from molds and, start with this color tree. And then it's nice when I'm on the Flavor Wood, I'm mostly either in the art section or the Crossroads. They're like the two that I jump back and forth between in different topics. I'll bounce, in Weta here and there, but I just love seeing what other people, Larian, I would butcher his last name, but the full size bust that he's doing, the Boromir
yeah.
funeral boat,
Yeah.
Aragorn's tomb with, Arwen standing up mourning him next to it. I mean, some of these guys, the way that they sculpt, it's mind boggling when you look at it. And I guess it's like anything else. You get good at what you do, but every ounce of it, you draw a little bit of inspiration. You just do the best you can to try to make whatever you're going to contribute the best that you have the ability to do.
Well, let's not forget that the biggest inspiration of all is Weta and all of the artists there that continuously
very much
20
so.
years later that are still inspiring us to make things. I mean, I probably watched the appendices, the Weta workshop, just last month. I watched them, all three of them again. I mean, there's still constant inspiration, things that they did 20 years ago that still go back to look to see how they did things, and it's never going to get old. They're a constant inspiration.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. We're so thankful that we get the opportunity to talk with some of those guys, online and like on the Flame of Badoon, being able to talk to Daniel and ask him questions. I still get a little excited. It's like, this is the guy that designed Sting, that designed Treebeard. I get to talk to him.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, there's one thing that I wanted to mention, and I don't know if I did it last time, but there is a discerning between Weta Workshop and 3'6" Studios, and I don't know how many people know that. Everybody thinks everything was made by Weta, and there's so many props that aren't armor and that aren't prosthetics or anything that were made by a whole nother group of people. I mean, like the wizard staffs were made by 3'6" production department. They made all the stuff that you find inside of, set dressings, all those other props. Many things that I've tried to replicate, they come from a completely different source, and then they're a lot harder to find. But at 3'6" Studios, it was 3'7" for the Hobbit. They made another one, but it's Dan Hanna and what was Grant Major. If you watch the behind the scenes stuff, you'll see them talk. But those other artists, I can't find who they are, but they're responsible for so much even more of things that you see on screen that we're not giving them credit for.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's easy to miss sometimes. You blow through the credits when you're watching the movies, and you just have that natural assumption that if Weta did Lord of the Rings, then they must follow that they were involved in everything else. And I actually didn't know that distinction until Kit Ray pointed that out. I think it was in one of the staff discussions. So important to give credit where credit's due. Sorry, Mike, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no problem. So I released a collection video recently on YouTube, and I had a person comment, and I'm waiting for him to release his video. He said that he created the original Aragorn coronation crown.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
And that he's going to release a video and talk about the different techniques and and apparently he made it before, obviously during the movie. He also said that he was, I don't know if it was stunt double or stand-in for Aragorn himself in the movie. So he was part of the filming and stuff like that. I'm waiting for him to release, so I'll share the link with you guys if he does end up producing that. But it was pretty neat to kind of like see maybe if that's possible. If he is what he says and he does end up releasing the video, I'd be very interested to watch it, just to see like from a 20-year-old standpoint. Like, I made the original crown, the one that, the one that Aragorn wore on his head in the final, you bow to nobody, right? That's like,
Yeah.
It's a great
That's
part.
pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. We've had it's been a blast to be able to kind of talk to you about this kind of unique aspect of collecting. You guys can find Andrew on his YouTube channel, Into Darkness, or on Instagram, and same with Mike. You can find him on his new YouTube channel, Middle Earth Fan PA, or his Instagram channel, and they're great places to kind of follow their builds. You know, Mike's always posting stories on this, you know, the progress on his builds, and it's a great place to just kind of see what they're up to and what they're creating. If you're not on the, and as well, just getting on the Flame of Voodoo and United Cutlery or Ultimate Collectors forum. So I always butcher that one. So thank you for joining us, and if you know, thank you for watching, everyone who's out there, who's subscribed to us and who's following. Your support means a lot to us, and we've had a lot of fun just filming this, and we hope you guys enjoyed this episode.
Yeah, thanks everyone, and if you're enjoying
Thanks for
our
having
content
me.
and our show, please hit like and subscribe. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.